What a fantastic Easter weekend of football for the most entertaining league around, and nearly everything is still to play for in the Championship. 2 games to go and 8 teams could still potentially get relegated. And when you look at the league table and you see the points tally, you think, well, surely Stoke will be okay. Well, no. You look at their fixtures, Sheffield United followed by Derby, who are in the relegation battle on the last day. The team underneath them, Preston, on 49 points. Next up, they've got Plymouth, followed by Bristol City. A team trying to stay up, and then a team trying to get playoffs in the Championship as well. Everything's to play for down there, and it's very difficult to call. I actually think yesterday's result at Turf Moor is a really good result for Stoke. They're away to play Sheffield United, who have nothing to play for now. They are in the playoffs. They are finishing third, and that's that. I'd imagine the last thing Stoke want to do is play a Sheffield United side who won against Burnley and need to win, just like they did against Leeds United, who hammered them 6-0 yesterday. All to play for down the bottom, all to play for in the playoffs as well. Because whereas down the bottom, every team picked up points, well, Cardiff drew, but it felt like every other team was winning down there. They were winning against teams trying to get into the playoffs. Bristol City had a defeat. Coventry got beat. Sunderland are in bad form. Sheffield United are in bad form at the minute. Middlesbrough now have a good chance. Millwall suddenly have an outside chance of getting into the playoffs. Everything is up for grabs with 5th and 6th spot in the Championship. But what we do know is 4th is Sunderland, 3rd is Sheffield United, then the top 2 and automatically promoted are now Burnley and Leeds United. Fantastic achievements. And I appreciate for those fans, winning the league is still there and something to go for. As a neutral, I'll never really be arsed who wins the Championship. It's a case of who comes up, which 3 sides are coming up. And I'm sure if Leeds go on and win the title, they'll be buzzing, likewise Burnley. But if not, I doubt they'll lose too much sleep that they only finish 2nd in the Championship, because at the start of the season, it's all about getting back to the Premier League for those 2 clubs, and they've done it. What a fantastic game of football for both yesterday. Leeds smashing Stoke, because coming out of that last international break, there was a lot of talk around Leeds. Were they going to do it, or were they going to bottle it again? And after the first couple of games, post-international break, you thought, oh, Leeds are going to do this. Leeds are going to throw this away. But they've got back into form. And when it mattered yesterday, they turned up, just like Burnley. They've been the most consistent team for me this season. I think Leeds might go on and win the league. I've always thought that. Did the video a couple of weeks ago saying I think Leeds will win it. But Burnley have been incredibly impressive. Let's talk about both of these teams. But if you're new to the Tartan YouTube channel, please do subscribe and also drop a like on the video as well by clicking the thumbs up. And before we do discuss those 2 teams, special mention, well done Portsmouth. They've secured next season in the Championship. Fantastic result for them yesterday. And would I say I've got a soft spot? I've been rooting for Portsmouth. I've been wanting Portsmouth to stay up, so maybe I have. I don't know why. Well, I know one reason. That's because our player Freddie Potts is on loan at Portsmouth, and therefore I want them to do well. I want him to do well, and he's had a fantastic season at Fratton Park as well. And I do find myself rooting for Bristol City because of Lee Manning and George Earthy, but also because I think there's sort of romance if Bristol City get into the playoffs, like the underdogs to some extent. They've always been all right in the Championship, but to see them get into the playoffs would be nice. It'd be fun. That's what football should be, fun. But for Portsmouth, I think there's an element that when I was a kid growing up, they were in the Premier League. They had Harry Redknapp, and it was fun. Portsmouth were fun when they were in the Premier League, and I think because of that, maybe I do have a soft spot. But when I seen that they'd secured Championship football next season, I'd be lying if I didn't think, well done Portsmouth. So congratulations, and it's just a big an achievement for them to stay up as it is for Burnley and Leeds to get up. And let's discuss Leeds United first, because I think the bigger pressure was on them, and in particular Farke. Last year they lost the playoff to Southampton, and I think they were unlucky not to get promoted last season. To have that much points, usually it's enough to come up automatically, but they had to settle for the playoffs. Then they went on and lost to Southampton. And fair play to Leeds for sticking with Farke, because as a neutral, I would have thought he would have got sacked. And I think it would have been understandable had they decided to sack him, because Leeds not coming up, that's it, isn't it, for Leeds? You come up or it's failure. It's one or the two. The expectation and the pressure is that high at that club. And so it should be. They're a massive club. I'm pleased they're back in the Premier League. I'm looking forward to Leeds United back in the Premier League. But they're stuck with Farke. It was a difficult summer for them last year. Somerville left. Rutter left. Gray left. Even when the season got underway, they still hadn't finished assembling their squad for the season. Solomon going in there late. And there was big pressure on Farke. There always has been since he went to Leeds, because it is a big job. It's the biggest job in the Championship. And even in the Premier League, it's still one of the bigger jobs in the Premier League, although they are newcomers next season. And I'm not his biggest fan. I will hold my hands up. I'd be lying if I said, oh yeah, Farke, yeah, I've always had faith in him. I haven't. And I'm still unsure if he's the right manager for Leeds in the Premier League. But what I am sure of, he's done well this season, done really well this season, and he deserves a crack at it next year. Leeds lost those players. January, they didn't strengthen. So coming into this summer, I'm expecting them to have a bit of money to spend. They've got the backing of the 49ers and Red Bull. So financially, they should be well equipped for this transfer window. And I think there's a lot of players available for the newly promoted Championship teams. I think there will be a lot of good quality players there that have Premier League experience, have Premier League ability. Something's not quite worked out for them. And I'll use Evan Ferguson as a really good example. Not fancied at Brighton, gone on loan to West Ham, not fancied there. But for a promoted side, maybe that would be a good signing. I expect Leeds to be linked to someone like Evan Ferguson. But I don't think they need loads. I actually feel like Leeds are possibly better equipped this time than when they came up on the previous occasion. But the one thing I want to speak about in regards to Leeds is that I've read this story about Ampadu, and I think he's been a good player and a really good leader for Leeds United. But the story about him, that last summer he went in to discuss the bonuses for the squad for this season, and usually it's a case of it's pro rata. Whoever plays the most minutes gets the most money. So the likes of Ampadu and Joe Rodon would be, hey, they'd be quids in because they played the most money for Leeds. Played the most minutes for Leeds, so they get the most money. But Ampadu didn't want that. He wanted everybody to get paid the same, regardless of how much minutes you played, because he felt that if you're coming to training, if you're giving 100%, if you're committed to the football club, you have just as much an impact on the squad and on the season as those playing the minutes. And I love that mentality, that sort of togetherness. And that's epitomizes the song that they sing, I guess. But I don't know, I read that story about Ampadu and I thought that is fantastic. I like seeing that. I like captains and managers and players that will maybe step out from the norm in football, because it's easy to copy. It's much easier to copy what other clubs do and almost hide behind that. So to step out and do something on your own, it's kind of brave. Yeah, I've got a lot of time for that, actually. I like Ampadu. I like him as a player, and I like him as a character as well. And when I read that story, I thought, you know what, fair play. And that's the type of characters you want in your dressing room. And I think it's a fair assumption that that will happen again this summer. And it just means that if you're not playing, you're not losing out financially. And if you're a young player on low wages, you're picking up a decent bonus comparable to the highest earners in the squad as well. And I appreciate that, speaking about football and money, it's not everyone's favourite topic, but at the end of the day, it's a job to them. Make a big difference. I think that will have had a big impact. But well done, Leeds United. I'm pleased they're back in the Premier League. I'm intrigued to see how they get on. And they'd have a good summer transfer window. I think they'd be all right. Definitely need a new keeper. But they've been consistent and they deserve it. Burnley, wow. Scott Parker, 3 promotions with 3 different clubs now. That is outstanding. That is an incredible record. He's had his flaws as a manager so far, no doubt about it. Let's not pretend Scott Parker has been the best thing since sliced bread as a manager. However, he's still young. He's still learning his trade as a manager. But to have 3 promotions already as a manager is fantastic. Burnley have been the team that's just difficult to beat all season. 31 games unbeaten, I think it is now. That's just... It doesn't matter what league you play in. That is ridiculous. Maybe not so much if you are the Hollywood Welsh club and you were in the National League and you've got a budget similar to a League One club. That's not as impressive. But to do it in the Championship, which I think is one of the hardest leagues in football, to do it there is huge. 15 goals conceded in 44 games. Unheard of. I'm pretty certain he's breaking records with that defensive numbers. Chelsea did something similar in the Premier League, but obviously the seasons, only 38 games, so less games, similar amount of goals conceded. Outstanding. Burnley, incredible. I'm really pleased for him as well. I think Parker's a likeable person, and obviously a West Ham affiliation there too. But that Burnley side, the first half of the season, and this is a big difference, when Burnley had their blip, I think it was 5 games in 7, they finished 0-0. I mean, they won the other 2. They didn't lose. They just drew 0-0 in 5 games out of 7. That was Burnley's bad form. Sheffield United, who are currently going through their bad form, are losing games. They're not just dropping points. Burnley dropped points, but they still picked up a point per game. Sheffield United have dropped points and picked up nothing. And that's what's cost them automatic promotion. And I do fear for them going into the playoffs. They're not in good form. Sunderland are not in good form. They are stuttering at the minute as well. History tells us, don't worry, usually 3rd or 4th will come up. I think the last team that finished outside 3rd or 4th to come up in the playoffs, and forgive me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure someone will correct me, and be my guest, and so you should, because one way to say is factual, not opinion. But I think it was Aston Villa back in 2019 was the last team to not finish 3rd or 4th and win the playoffs. So history tells us it's usually 3rd or 4th. I think you have to go back to 2010 for the last time a side that finished 6th won the playoffs. So 15 years since 6th place went on to win at Wembley and get promoted to the Premier League. So history suggests it will be Sheffield United or Sunderland, but I'll tell you what, form suggests it won't be. 2 games to go, that will have a big impact. If Sheffield United win back-to-back games, I mean, they will go to the playoffs favourites, but they'll go into playoffs heavy favourites, if that makes sense. But those 2 really need to get some points on the board going into the playoffs. But back to Burnley. Scott Parker had a ridiculously hard job on his hands. Last summer, was it 20? Over 20 players left Burnley last summer. That is a whole new team. You're not just rebuilding. You're not just, oh no, a few players have left, let's get some more. A bit like what Leeds had. They had their star players left, but there was a lot of players remained at Leeds from last season to this season. Burnley, it was pretty much everyone left. They had to get a whole new team in. They've done it, and they've been fantastic. And I think what's impressed me, and I don't know if this is statistically true, this is just the feeling I've had from watching Burnley from an outsider's perspective. In the first half of the season, it felt very much 1-0 Burnley, that they were winning games whilst keeping a clean sheet, but they weren't scoring too many goals. And I appreciate, at the minute, they scored the same amount of goals as Sheffield United, but I do feel like in the second half of the season, post-Christmas, there's been a bit of a change at Burnley, and it's gone from 1-0 to 2-1 to some extent. I feel like I've seen Burnley score more goals in the second half of the season than the first half, and so they should, because he's shown he can have a really good defence at Burnley, but he's got really good attacking players there in terms of personnel. Can we see them? And obviously bringing in players like Marcus Edwards and Anthony has been good additions for them. So it's, can you get more goals? Because my fear would have been at Christmas time, if Burnley got promoted, well, are you going to win 1-0 in the Premier League? Maybe you will, but there's going to be games where you're going to have to score. Keeping clean sheets against Preston, Millwall, Bristol City, that's one thing, but can you keep clean sheets against West Ham, Wolves, Man United, Spurs, Everton? And the reason I use those clubs is because we're the ones at the bottom of the group that's staying in the Premier League. The ones beneath them are back to the Championship, likely, whilst not confirmed. So can you then build that defence? Can you use that defence as your foundation next season? And I think for some games, certainly. But Vincent Kompany was the example of what happens if a manager has a way of playing and doesn't budge from it. They swept the Championship aside, played fantastic football, but they went from the best team in the league to the worst team in the league literally overnight. And almost a failure to adapt. And I feel like Kompany did. I feel like in the second half of the season in the Premier League, Kompany he didn't rip up his blueprint and start again, but he adjusted it a little bit, and it got a bit better. But it was too little, too late, I think, was the story there. And I think Burnley had an example of a manager that, I don't want to say put his ego first, but put his philosophy first, and believed in it too much. Or did he just, because of that move to Bayern Munich, it's hard to turn around and suggest that it didn't work out for company, whilst Burnley was the one that got relegated. I feel like Parker doesn't have that. I think Parker's got that flexibility. Parker has shown this season in the Championship, I can adapt. I can play a different way if I need to. Yes, we can do the 1-0, but here we are. We can also do the 2-1. And I think that's important. If you come up, you do want to have a good defence, but you want to make sure you can score goals as well. And that would have been my fear. Leeds are showing this season they can score goals. Over 80 goals they've scored in Championship. They've got goals in them. That's been helped by putting 6 past Stoke yesterday. I think the concern is, can Leeds keep clean sheets? Probably not. Not with that keeper, because he chucks in the back of his net sometimes. But they can do a little bit of work there. They can get a new keeper. Liverpool needs to be sorted one way or another, whether he gets a new contract or signs a new contract or leaves. They might need a new left back. They might need a new central midfielder. That number 10 role, I think, is something they're going to have to look at with Solomon. Do they sign Solomon or not? So Leeds need a bit of work. I think Burnley do too. But I do feel like Parker, not this is it, but he's been underwhelming in the Premier League so far as a manager. However, and so has Farke, but I think there's excuses for both. With Farke, he was at Norwich, didn't spend any money. They spent less than £1 million. How was he meant to keep that Norwich side up? Develop some of the youngsters like James Maddison. So he had one hand tied behind his back. So he deserves another crack at it, and he's going to get it. With Parker, he was young as a manager. He was inexperienced. And he did okay, but he struggled at the same time. I think that's a fair statement to make. But I actually admire him for going to Burnley. Quite a big job to take, a difficult job to take. But he's absolutely smashed it this season. It'll be interesting to see how they both get on. Big summer's ahead, but we're not even in May yet. And I imagine they would have already started planning for the Premier League. I've seen Leeds' statement saying that they have started, that preparation is underway. I believe that. They've got a long time to prepare. 4 months until the Premier League season gets underway. And I think for both teams, the fixture list is easy to dismiss as a fan. Fixtures come out, you go, you play everyone twice. You do, but I do think if you can get a favourable 5-6 games at the start of the season and get a few points on board, keep your confidence from this season going into next season and keep it, you might do all right. You've got a chance. But if you go the first 5-6 games of the season without picking up a win, even though there's 32 games left, it becomes very difficult. The confidence is gone. The manager's under pressure already. So I think if you want a kind start, but well done to Leeds and well done to Burnley. Fantastic achievements. Then I always think that if you get promoted, automatically you deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. You can lose a game down to luck, but you can't get promoted down to luck. You need a little bit of it along the season, of course you do. But so does every team. Every team has a bit of luck. It's not like the team that sits 12th had none. They've had some too, some good and some bad. But I always think that if you get automatic promotion, it's because you deserve it. It's because you've been the best, you've been the most consistent, and that's exactly what Leeds and Burnley have been. Sheffield United now have to endure the playoffs. That's going to be difficult. Who will they be playing in the playoffs? We don't know, because the Championship is the most entertaining league around. 2 games to go. I can't wait.